cold wind scraped along the riverbank that night, carrying the smell of rust, wet soil, and something else, something sharp, metallic, and wrong. Daniel Reeves had only stopped under the old county bridge to clear his thoughts, to steady the shaking in his hands after another argument with his brother. But the moment he stepped beneath the concrete arch, a desperate howl tore through the darkness. A German shepherd stood trembling at the water's edge, staring past him into the shadows, ears pinned back, body stiff with warning. She wasn't crying for help. She was telling him to run. And Daniel had no idea why. The river was low for November, exposing the jagged ribs of old rocks and the remnants of a rusted truck someone had pushed off the bank years back. Moonlight trembled over the water, broken by the occasional ripple of a drifting branch. Daniel kept his distance from the river's edge, rubbing his arms for warmth. He hadn't planned to stop. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. But tonight everything felt too heavy. His father's old house, the bills piling on the kitchen table, the voicemail from the sheriff warning him that his brother was spiraling again. He shouldn't have listened to the sheriff. He shouldn't have driven to confront Mark. He shouldn't have yelled. But all those shouldn'ts had already happened. Another howl cut through the night, raw and strangely human in its desperation. Daniel startled and spun toward the sound. The German shepherd stood rigid on the bridge, the thick fur along her spine raised like quills. "Easy," Daniel whispered, raising both hands as if approaching a cornered child. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The dog didn't growl. She didn't bare her teeth. She simply barked once, sharp, explosive, terrified, and then whipped her head toward the shadows again. Something moved there. Daniel froze. At first, it was just a shifting of deeper black against the darkness. Subtle enough, he almost convinced himself he imagined it. Then a soft scraping followed, like a boot dragging across stone. Except it didn't sound like a boot. It was wetter, a sticky, uneven sound that made his stomach twist. The dog backed away from the noise, stepping sideways until her shoulder pressed against Daniel's leg. Not threatening, seeking safety. His pulse kicked hard. "Okay," he murmured, voice shaking. "Okay, girl, let's get out of here." She didn't move. Instead, she locked her gaze on the far side of the bridge and growled low in her throat. A warning, directed not at him, but for him. Daniel swallowed. He should leave. He knew that instinctively. But some stubborn part of him, the same part that drove him to try fixing things that weren't his responsibility, kept him rooted to the spot. He took out his phone, thumb hovering over the flashlight icon. The dog flinched slightly, so he hesitated. Something about turning on the light felt wrong, like it might draw attention rather than reveal anything. A faint metallic clink from the shadows. Not random. Intentional. Daniel's breath hitched. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the sound of river, the dog's uneven breathing, and Daniel's heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his ribs. "Is someone hurt?" He tried again. "If you need help, just say something." Another step. Another wet scrape. The dog barked again, louder this time, and lunged forward, stopping only when Daniel grabbed her collar. She snarled fiercely at the darkness, pulling against his grip with desperate strength. His instincts finally overruled everything else. "We're leaving," he said firmly, tugging her toward his truck. But the dog twisted around him, planting her paws and pushing him toward the slope of the riverbank instead, toward a narrow path leading under the bridge. "Hey, stop, don't." Daniel stumbled, nearly slipping on loose gravel. The shepherd barked once, then looked back at him, eyes wide with urgency. It didn't make sense. If she was afraid of the thing in the shadows, why push him closer? Unless the danger wasn't coming from the darkness ahead. Maybe it was something she wanted him to see before he ran. "Fine," he whispered. "Just show me quick, okay?" His voice shook, but the nod he gave her felt steady enough. The dog led him to the underside of the bridge, where the concrete columns were covered in old graffiti. Daniel crouched low, following her until she stopped at a rusted metal beam half buried in debris. That's when he saw it. A shoe. At first, that's all it looked like. Black, muddy, worn. But the shepherd nudged it with her paw, exposing pale skin beneath. Daniel felt the world tilt. "God," he breathed, dropping to his knees. It wasn't just a shoe. A foot lay inside it, attached to a leg, attached to a body. He leaned closer, hands trembling violently. The person was a man, maybe mid-40s, dressed in jeans and a heavy brown jacket. His face was bruised beyond recognition. Blood dried along his temple in a thick, cracked trail. His hands were bound with zip ties. Daniel recoiled so hard, he scraped his shoulder against the concrete column. "What the hell happened to you?" He didn't expect an answer. The man didn't look like he'd be giving one any time soon. But then the body twitched. Just a little. A faint, fragile movement, like a dying muscle spasm. Daniel jerked forward. "Hey! Hey! Hey, can you hear me?" "Sir, open your eyes." The man didn't respond, but something else did. From deeper in the shadows, a voice, low, breathy, broken, rasped, "Leave him." Daniel's skin turned ice. "Who's there?" he called out, throat tightening. A tall figure stepped into the faint moonlight, filtering through the bridge's cracks. A man, thin, shoulders slightly hunched. His clothes dark, drenched from a river. Mud splattered up his arms. His face shadowed, except for the glint of something metallic strapped across his belt. A hunting knife. The shepherd's growl deepened, and Daniel instinctively shifted, so she was half behind him. His mouth went dry. "You need to walk away," the stranger said quietly. "This isn't your business." Daniel forced himself to stand, though his knees felt like water. "Someone's dying. That makes it my business." The stranger tilted his head. "No, it doesn't. Not tonight. I'm calling the sheriff." "You won't," the man replied calmly. "Not once I explain." He took a step closer. Daniel's hand tightened around a fist-sized rock near his foot. "Don't come any closer." The man froze, the knife's handle catching a sliver of moonlight. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said slowly. "But if you stay, someone will." "Who?" Daniel demanded. The stranger hesitated. And something in the way he looked past Daniel, toward the river, toward the road above, toward the wide, dark nothing, sent a cold current sliding through Daniel's spine. "The people following him," the man finally whispered. "The ones who did that." Daniel's pulse thundered. "What people?" The stranger's jaw tightened. He glanced over his shoulder, tense and listening. "They're coming," he said simply. The dog barked wildly at the darkness. "Listen," the stranger continued, voice taut with urgency. "Take the dog, leave the man, and go home. If you care about your life, your family, your brother, you walk away right now." Daniel froze. "My brother?" The stranger stopped breathing for a second. It was subtle, but Daniel caught it. "You mentioned my brother," Daniel whispered. "How the hell do you know Mark?" The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly for the knife. Daniel gripped the rock harder. The dog sprung into a defensive stance. For a single breath, everything stood suspended. 3 figures on a bridge, locked in a triangle of suspicion, fear, and silent warning. Then headlights flickered across the underside of the bridge. A car, pulling up on the road above. The stranger's eyes widened. Too late. He backed into the shadows. Daniel shouted, "Wait! Don't you!" But the stranger vanished into the dark like he'd never been there at all. The sound of a vehicle door slamming echoed overhead. The shepherd whimpered and pressed against Daniel's leg again, trembling violently. Daniel looked up the slope, toward the parking area above. He didn't know who was coming. He didn't know what the stranger meant. But as footsteps crunched on gravel overhead, one thing became painfully clear. Whatever the dog had been warning him about, it had just arrived. The footsteps on the gravel were slow, measured in a way that didn't sound like a hiker, a drunk kid, or some insomniac taking a midnight walk. These steps had weight, purpose. Daniel held the shepherd close, feeling her ribs shudder against his arm. She wasn't just afraid. She was bracing for something she recognized. A soft beam of a flashlight swept across the slope above, cutting through the branches and concrete like a blade of white fire. Daniel ducked lower, pulling the dog with him, hiding behind the thick column holding the bridge aloft. The man lying at his feet, the battered man with the zip-tied wrists, let out a barely audible groan. The shepherd turned sharply and nudged his shoulder, whining low. Daniel swallowed. "Stay quiet," he whispered. He wasn't even sure whom he was talking to. The beam of light moved again, this time narrower, sharper. Whoever held it knew how to move without noise. A hunter, maybe, a professional. Someone who understood how to stalk rather than wander. A moment later, a car door shut softly. Too soft, too careful, and a second set of steps joined the first. 2 people, maybe more. Daniel's mind raced. The stranger's warning echoed in his skull. The people who did this. They're coming. He considered dragging the wounded man behind the column, but the man was heavy, semi-conscious, and tied. Moving him would be too loud. The steps descended the worn dirt path under the bridge. Daniel's pulse hammered. The shepherd pressed herself flat beside him, chest heaving. The flashlight beam hit the underside of the bridge and stopped, right on the battered man. A voice, a man's, hissed sharply. There he is." Another voice answered, smoother and colder. "Alive?" The beam dipped down. "Barely." Daniel clamped a hand over his own mouth, forcing himself not to gasp. He recognized that second voice. Not the tone, not the cadence, but something buried deep and it brought back a burned memory, like hearing someone hum a half-forgotten song. He couldn't place it. Not yet. But the familiarity scared him more than the knife he'd seen earlier. The light moved toward the injured man, and 2 figures followed, silhouetted in black against the fading moonlight. Daniel inched forward just enough to glimpse their shapes between the slanted beams. One was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a clean jacket and boots that didn't match the mud caked around them. His posture was rigid, controlled. The other was wiry, nervous, head swiveling like a bird scanning for predators. The tall one crouched. "Tie his legs." The wiry man hesitated. "Shouldn't we, finish it here?" "No." The tall man's tone had no emotion at all. "Not yet." But if someone saw. No one saw. At that, the tall one paused, glancing around with quiet suspicion that made Daniel shrink deeper behind the column. The shepherd growled under her breath. The tall man stiffened. He had heard that. Flashlight beams swung toward them. Daniel held his breath, so long his lungs burned. The shepherd trembled uncontrollably, but she did not roar or bark. She stayed pressed to him, as if she understood silence was her only hope. The wiry one stepped closer. "Did you hear that?" The tall one raised a hand. "Quiet." They listened. Daniel forced his heartbeat slow. Silence, silence, silence. Then a truck rumbled faintly in the distance on the far road. The tall man exhaled. "Just the wind." But it wasn't confidence in his voice. It was irritation, doubt. They bent back over the injured man. The wiry one pulled out more zip ties. The injured man groaned again, low, involuntary. "Please." The words slipped out of the man's dry throat, almost broken. The wiry one recoiled. "Jesus, he's conscious." "Doesn't matter," the tall one muttered. "He won't be for long." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. They were going to kill him. And if they found Daniel and the dog, if they realized he had seen their faces, he wouldn't make it off this riverbank either. He had to leave. He tugged the shepherd closer, whispering into her ear. "We're going up the far side." Slowly. She looked at him with glassy, terrified eyes, but she obeyed, stepping carefully behind him. He moved inch by inch, using the column as cover, then the shadow of a large boulder. His heart pounded with every slow step, every faint crunch of gravel beneath his boots. Above them, the tall man spoke again. "Call the others. Tell them we found him." The wiry man fumbled with his phone. Daniel froze. More people? More coming here? The shepherd pressed her body against Daniel's leg, pushing him forward, urging him to move. They reached the slope leading to the far side of the bridge, steep, lined with loose dirt and weeds. Daniel tested the first step. The soil shifted underfoot, crumbling silently. Good. Quiet. He took another step upward. The dog followed close, placing her paws in his footprints, barely making sound. Another step. Another, then a rock, snapped in half under his boot. A sharp crack echoed across the river. The flashlight beam whipped around instantly. "There!" the tall man barked. Daniel froze, but the shepherd launched herself ahead of him, sprinting up the slope. "Go!" he whispered, stumbling after her. Footsteps thundered behind him. He scrambled up the slope, clawing at roots and rocks, lungs burning. Gravel rolled beneath him. Slipping back with each frantic step, he felt the rough concrete of the bridge's edge under his palm. Just a little farther, then a hand clamped onto his ankle. Daniel screamed. The wiry man had caught him, fingers digging like talons through his jeans. "Got him!" the man shouted. Daniel kicked wildly, heel smashing into the man's wrist. Pain shot through his leg, but the grip loosened. He kicked again, harder. This time the wiry man lost his hold. Daniel scrambled upward with everything he had. The shepherd barked at the top of the slope, urging him on, frantic, desperate. He reached the edge of the road, dragged himself onto the asphalt, and lurched to his feet. "Run!" he gasped at the dog, not needing to say it twice. They sprinted down the road toward his truck. Behind him, voices yelled. Gravel crashed. The flashlight beam jerked violently as the men tried climbing the same loose slope. Daniel grabbed the truck door. His hand shook so badly he dropped the keys once, cursed, scooped them up, and jammed them into the lock. The shepherd jumped in beside him. The engine roared to life. A second later, figures burst onto the road behind him, but he didn't wait to see how many or who held weapons. He slammed the gas pedal. The truck shot forward, tires spitting gravel. Once he hit the main road, he kept driving until the bridge disappeared in the rear-view mirror. The shepherd stood on the seat beside him, chest heaving, eyes wide, staring through the windshield like she expected someone to appear at any second. Only when he was 5 miles away did Daniel finally slow down, just enough to keep control of the wheel. His hands were shaking violently. "Okay," he whispered, voice cracking. Okay. The shepherd whimpered and nudged his arm. Daniel let out a harsh, shaky laugh. "I don't even know your name." She sat, ears tilted, watching him carefully. A tag hung from her collar. He reached for it. The name read, Mara. His breath caught. He knew that name. Every local did. Mara belonged to the missing paramedic, Claire Harker, disappeared 2 weeks ago without a trace. The entire county had searched the woods, the lake, the back roads. Mara had vanished with her. Finding the dog here, guarding a tortured, half-dead man. None of this was coincidence. Daniel pulled off the road and parked behind an old grain silo, heart pounded with a mix of clarity and dread. "You're trying to lead me somewhere, aren't you?" he whispered. Mara stared at him, steady and intense, as if waiting for him to understand. He looked toward the dark stretch of highway leading back into town. His father's house was 8 minutes away. The sheriff's office, 12. His brother Mark, God knew where. And somewhere out there, the stranger who knew Mark's name was moving through the trees. Daniel exhaled slowly, resting his forehead on the steering wheel. He needed help. He needed to call someone. A phone buzzed violently in the cup holder. His phone. He hadn't touched it. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Don't go home." Daniel's blood ran cold. A second message appeared instantly. "We need to talk." Mark. Daniel stared, breath collapsing inside him. His brother. The brother he'd argued with just hours ago. The brother who'd gone quiet for months. The brother the sheriff warned him was mixed up in something dangerous. Mara growled, low and warning, her eyes locked onto the phone, onto the text. Daniel's heart hammered. "Mark, what the hell have you gotten into?" A third message appeared. "If you want to survive tonight, come to the old orchard. Don't tell anyone. Don't bring anyone. And don't trust the dog." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. Don't trust the dog? Mara watched it with eyes that flickered between fear and fierce loyalty. There was no scenario in which she was the enemy. Someone was trying to turn him against the only creature who'd save him tonight. Daniel breathed out slowly. "Mark," he whispered, "what are you doing to me?" Before he could decide whether to drive to the orchard or straight to the sheriff, Mara suddenly bristled. Ears up, muscles rigid, staring toward the dark silo beyond the truck. Daniel turned slowly. A shape stood there. A silhouette. The stranger from under the bridge. And he wasn't alone. Mara's growl deepened into a sound Daniel had never heard from a dog, low, guttural, vibrating with something between fear and fury. Her entire body braced against the seat, staring through the windshield at the figures in the dark. Daniel's mouth went dry. The stranger from under the bridge stood 10 feet from the truck, breath rising in faint white plumes. Behind him were 2 others, faces hidden under the hoods of heavy jackets. Their silhouettes blended with the tall grass around the silo, as if the night had shaped them out of shadows. Before Daniel could reach the gear shift, the stranger raised a hand. "Don't," he said softly. His voice wasn't murderous now, just tired. "We're not here to hurt you." Mara barked so violently the truck shook. The stranger flinched, but kept his distance. The dog knows part of the truth, not all of it. "Back up," Daniel demanded, voice shaking. "Right now, back away from the truck." The stranger nodded and stepped back. The others followed. They stayed close enough to talk, but far enough to show they weren't rushing him. "Daniel," the stranger said, "we need to talk before your brother gets to you." Daniel froze. "How do you keep knowing Mark's name?" The stranger exchanged a glance with the hooded figures. Then he pulled off his glove and tossed something onto the dirt. It skidded to a stop at Daniel's feet. A badge. Shiny. Scratched. Familiar. County Sheriff's Office. Special Investigations Division. Daniel blinked. "You're a cop?" "Not exactly," the man said. "Think of us as a part of law enforcement the public doesn't see when corruption runs deep. We've been watching your county for months." "Watching what?" The stranger stepped closer. "The people who tortured that man under the bridge. The same people tied to shootings, disappearances, drug lanes running through the orchards, and a paramedic who went missing." Daniel's stomach twisted. "Claire Harker." Mara whined softly, eyes dropping to the ground. The stranger nodded. "Yes, her." Daniel swallowed hard. "But what does this have to do with Mark?" The stranger hesitated. That hesitation told Daniel everything before a single word left the man's mouth. "No," Daniel whispered. "No, Mark isn't. He wouldn't be mixed up with people like them." The stranger's jaw tensed. "Your brother didn't choose this. He was pulled in, forced, and now he knows too much." Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. "Then why did he tell me not to trust the dog?" Mara growled again, hurt, offended, confused. The stranger took a breath. "Because Mark thinks Mara is leading you toward him, away from safety. He doesn't realize she's trying to save you both." "Save us from what?" The stranger pointed at the badge on the ground. "From the sheriff," he said plainly, "and from the men who own him." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. The sheriff, who'd warned him about Mark just days ago, complicit in the same violence? "No," Daniel whispered. "You're lying." "I wish I was." The stranger's voice softened. "Daniel, who do you think called us when your brother tried to run last summer? Who do you think shut down every search when Claire disappeared? Who do you think sent men under that bridge tonight?" Daniel felt physically sick. Mara nudged his hand gently, grounding him. The stranger continued. "The sheriff wants the loose ends gone. The man under the bridge was supposed to be one of them. So is your brother." The air thinned around Daniel. "So am I?" "Yes." Everything inside him felt hollow. He leaned against a truck, mind spinning with fear and betrayal, and a rage that was colder than frost. "Where's Mark now?" he managed to ask. The stranger stepped backward, motioning for the others. "Come with us," he said. "We'll take you to the orchard. We'll get to him first, and then we'll end this." Daniel opened the truck door. Mara didn't move. Her muscles were tight, her ears tilted, not toward the strangers, but toward the woods behind them. Daniel followed her gaze. A faint crunch of leaves. Then a voice, shaky, exhausted, rose from the darkness. "Don't go with them, Danny." Daniel turned so fast he nearly fell. His brother, Mark, stood partially hidden behind the silo, limping, dirty, blood crusted along his forehead. His eyes were wide, haunted, locked onto the stranger's. Mara barked once, confused, torn. Daniel rushed to him. "Mark, what happened?" "Where were you?" Mark grabbed him by the collar, gripping hard. "Don't listen to them," he hissed. "They're not cops. They're the ones after me. After everyone. They killed Claire, Danny. They did." Mara barked again, louder, between the two sides, her body torn by instinct and memory. The stranger tensed. "Mark," he said, "put your hands where I can see them." "Shut up." Mark shouted back. "You're not taking him. You're not turning him into one of your messengers." "Messengers?" Daniel repeated, confused. "Mark, what are you talking about?" Mark shook his head rapidly. "You don't understand. I've seen what they do. I've seen where they take people. They're cleaning up the county, one by one. Anyone who talks. Claire tried to run. They silenced her. And now they want me next." The stranger stepped forward. "We didn't kill Claire." "Liar!" Mark screamed, so hard his voice cracked. The hooded figures shifted uneasily. Mara let out a broken howl. Caught between danger and recognition, Daniel looked between them. His brother, the strangers, the dog, everyone saying they were the only ones he should trust. Everyone saying the others would kill him. "I don't know what's true," Daniel whispered. Mark grabbed his arm harder. "Listen to me. Please. They have a place. An old cold storage building behind the orchard. I escaped from there. I heard them talking. They said your name. Danny. They said they'd take you next. You have to come with me. We have to run." The stranger cursed under his breath. "He's hallucinating. Trauma. They kept him locked up for days." "Shut your damn mouth." Mark roared. The two hooded figures reached slowly for weapons. Mara barked so sharply that all three men froze. Daniel stepped back from both groups. "Enough." His voice echoed across the fields. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind paused. "I'm going to the orchard," Daniel said. "But I'm not going with any of you. I'll drive myself. Mara stays with me. If any of you follow or try something, anything, I'll know who was lying." Mark's eyes widened, terrified. "Danny." The stranger lifted both hands. "Fine, but you're making a mistake. Probably," Daniel muttered, "but it's mine to make." He grabbed Mara's collar gently and climbed back into the truck. Mark reached for him. "Please, Danny." Daniel hesitated. "If you want to come with me, get in. But if you start lying to me, even once, I'll know." Mark swallowed hard, then climbed into the passenger seat, shaking with fear. Daniel locked the doors. Then he sped toward the orchard, the truck cutting through the night like a blade. The drive felt endless. Mark kept wringing his hands, muttering under his breath. "They hurt me, Danny. They kept asking about you. About Mara. I heard screams. I heard." Mara whimpered, resting her head in Daniel's lap. Daniel stroked her fur gently. "Whatever happens," he whispered to both of them, "we face it together." The orchard loomed ahead, rows of bare trees stretching like ribs under moonlight. Daniel killed the headlights and rolled to a stop at the edge of the old cold storage building. The door was cracked open. Wind whistled through it. Mark grabbed Daniel's arm. "Don't go in there." Daniel's heart pounded, but he stepped out anyway. "Mara," he whispered, "stay close." She did. Inside the building, the air was cold, smelled like rot and metal. Daniel walked slowly, boots crunching over broken glass. Then he froze. A figure sat slumped against the far wall, hands tied, head down, and beside it, a photograph nailed to the wooden beam. A photograph of Daniel, freshly printed. A caption scrawled underneath in red marker. "Next." Mark gasped. "Danny, we have to go now." But another voice cut him off. "You should have listened to me." Daniel turned. The sheriff stepped into the doorway, holding a shotgun. His badge glinted. His smile did not. Mark trembled violently. "No, no, please." Daniel stepped in front of him. Mara growled like a storm preparing to break. The sheriff cocked the shotgun lazily. Boys, you really stirred up a lot of trouble tonight." Behind him, more shapes moved in the dark, armed, silent. Daniel lifted his hands. "What do you want from us?" "Oh, not much," the sheriff said. "Just loose ends. And you too? You're the loosest ends I've got. He aimed. Daniel closed his eyes. Mara barked and launched herself forward. The shotgun fired. The blast echoed across the orchard. Daniel shouted, "Mara!" A body slammed into him, Mark, tackling him behind a stack of crates just as another shot rang out. Pain exploded in Daniel's ear from the noise. Screams. Footsteps. Shouting. Mara's growl turning into a furious, desperate snarl as she fought to reach him. Then, silence. Gunfire ceased. Boots pounded outside the building. The sheriff shouted something, but then the stranger's voice cut through the chaos. "Drop it." Shots burst outside. Yells. Glass shattering. Running. Daniel lay on the floor, dazed, ears ringing. Mark gripped his shoulders. "Are you okay? Danny, are you?" "Mara," Daniel whispered. "Where's Mara?" A soft whine answered him. She limped toward him from behind a metal barrel, her fur grazed by pellets, but alive. Thank God, alive. Daniel pulled her into his arms. Moments later, the stranger and his team stormed into the building, weapons raised. But the sheriff was already gone, vanished into the orchard shadows. Daniel's vision swam. The stranger lowered his gun. "It's over. For now." Mara collapsed beside Daniel, sobbing. Mara rested her head on Daniel's chest, exhausted. For a long moment, the world was quiet. No threats, no running, just breath, just relief. Daniel looked at his broken brother, at the dog who'd saved him twice, at the moonlight slipping through the shattered roof. "Let's go home," he whispered. And for the first time all night, the darkness didn't answer back.